My name is Saviour Robert, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. It's a terrific afternoon to look at the world view today. On our top stories today on World View, Russia plans to introduce electronic military an equal number of men and women in its cabinet. Protesters disrupt French President Emmanuel Macron's speech in the Netherlands about Europe's future as he faces mass protests over pension reform back home. The details. First on World View today, New Zealand will see an equal of Maori descent was promoted as a cabinet minister. Prime Minister Chris Hipkins said it is nice to have a cabinet that reflects the New Zealand population, the OECD, and the number of Maori, as well as LGBTQ plus MPs. From Wednesday, there are 10 women and 10 male members in the cabinet. The Prime Minister said the decision to appoint Prime as a cabinet minister was based on a combination of her skills and existing portfolios. Now, Prime holds the canvas a 6-month state of emergency in response to a rise in migrant numbers crossing the Mediterranean from North Africa. The decision frees up €5 million in funds and coincides with the arrival of some 2,000 people since Friday. The UN has recorded the highest number of migrant deaths since 2017. Its migration body said 441 deaths had been recorded in the central Mediterranean in the first 3 months of 2023. It warned that delays in state-led rescues saw at least 127 people dying, while in another deadly incident there had been a complete lack of response. Thousands more were rescued after the accident on Tuesday off the port city of Sfax. Away from that now, more than 100 people are feared to have been killed in Tuesday's airstrike by the Myanmar military, one of the deadliest so far in the civil war. Survivors told media they lived in the northwestern Sagaing region. The military has increasingly used airstrikes against their opponents since seizing power in February 2021. On the ongoing Ukraine war, Russia reportedly plans to introduce electronic military draft, approved the necessary legislation in 2 separate votes at lightning speed on Tuesday with near unanimity. Now, under the new proposal, summons will be sent electronically to under the legislation. Citizens who fail to show up at the military enlistment office will be automatically banned from traveling abroad and face a raft of other restrictions to complicate their lives inside Russia. Andrei Katapolov, chairman of the Defense Committee. Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on world leaders to respond after a video emerged apparently showing a Ukrainian soldier being beheaded by a service said it was investigating the alleged war crime, while the Kremlin said the video was awful, but its authenticity had to be checked, as well as who was behind it. The grainy and extremely graphic video appears to have been filmed on a mobile phone and possibly during the summer months. Invisible in the clip have white bands on their legs, which Russian soldiers are known to wear as a means of identification. They can also be heard to speak Russian, although that is not conclusive, as many Ukrainians speak Russian too. In the meantime, a senior Egyptian official has denied supplying Russia a day earlier. The Post reported that, according to leaked US intelligence documents, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi ordered the production, but told officials to keep it a secret to avoid problems with rounds and gunpowder. A senior official who spoke to international media called the Washington Post report informational tampering that has no basis in truth, adding that Egypt follows a balanced foreign policy determined by peace, stability, and development. Away from that now, police in Louisville, Kentucky have released body cam footage of the fatal shootout between police and a banker who was hit in the head, while the other suffered a graze wound before killing the suspect. The Deputy Police Chief Paul Humphrey said the videos show the officers heroically intervening to save lives. 4 people, including the police officer who were shot in the head, remain in hospital. The police say the 25-year-old. Now in France, protesters disrupted French President Emmanuel Macron's speech in the Netherlands about Europe's future as he faces mass protests over pension reform back home. Security officials detained a demonstrator who shouted at Macron is confronting the biggest challenge of his second term after pushing through his flagship pension overhaul, which includes raising the retirement age from 62 years to 64. The protesters gathered in an upper tier of a theater in The Hague and shouted, open quote, "You have millions of protesters in the streets who try to undermine laws passed by elected governments, put democracy at risk," citing the 2021 US Capitol riots and the 2023 attack on the Brazilian Congress.
Dear ministers, members of parliament, to say that I do admire Nexus Institute, what you do and how much you delivered such strong messages, not just for Europe, but for humanity and our common values. This question, if you give me some time.
Nobody listens. You have millions of people in the streets. Conventions of climate has been put.
Mr. Emmanuel Macron, we are here. Stop life on these lies.
But you want me? What we are discussing in France, the law we are passing, and how this is a democracy. And a democracy is exactly a place where you can demonstrate, you can have, as in your country, this type of...
Up to the US now, where former President Donald Trump, since he was criminally charged in New York last week. The Republican real estate magnate, who is facing 34 felony counts in New York over alleged hush money paid to an adult film actress, told Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson that nothing would prevent him from running, even a conviction. Trump, aged 76, in his first interview since being arrested and fingerprinted, lawsuits have repeatedly cast doubt on Biden's mental acuity and apparent frailty. Right-wing outlets like Fox News frequently highlight his alleged verbal flubs and moments where he appears to have lost his train of thought.
But I deal with other people. I don't see how it's possible. And it's not an age thing. You know, like I say, I have friends that are 88, 89, 92. Bernie Marcus, Home Depot, is 95. I mean, I had a meeting with him a few months ago. He was 100%. I know people that built their fortunes from 80 to 90. They were always struggling, and they made a fortune from 80 to 90. A couple of people in particular. It's amazing. He's not too old. You know, his age, I think they do the age thing because I'm 4 or 5 years behind. I was going to run into a very nice guy named Al Roker. When you can't get a softer question than that. That was a long answer, talking about the eggs and the this and that. Look, I don't think no, I'd never dropped.
Away from that now, Mexico has opened criminal proceedings against a top immigration official over a fire that killed 40 migrants in problems at the detention centers run by the agency. The decision to file charges against Francisco Garduno, the head of Mexico's National Immigration Institute, was announced on Tuesday by the 5 low-level officials. guards and a Venezuelan migrant already facing homicide charges in the case. Anger initially focused on 2 guards who were seen fleeing the March 27 fire without unlocking the cell. After the break, Israel has halted visits by Jews and tourists to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound after a wave of unrest in the holy city of Jerusalem. Candidate for next year's presidential elections, the Democratic Progressive Party's DPP choice of Lai, a man who has been more outspoken on Taiwanese independence than President Tsai Ing-wen, is of an island. The DPP's announcement on Wednesday came 2 days after China formally ended 3 days of military drills around Taiwan that included simulated attacks on key targets on the island. The 63-year-old has long been considered the front-runner for the DPP nomination to succeed Tsai's future by appeasing China, and has urged the island's residents to unite against its authoritarianism. Away from that now, Israel has halted visits by Jews and tourists to the Muslims to the sacred compound, which is known to Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif Noble Sanctuary, their third holiest site, and to Jews as the Temple Mount, the holiest place. Into raids at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. On the first night, at least 12 Palestinians were arrested and more than 400 were arrested. The raids triggered rockets. In a separate development, a Singapore-registered oil tanker has been boarded by unidentified persons about 300 nautical miles off Ivory Coast in the Gulf of Guinea. This is according to the city-state's Port Authority. The Gulf of Guinea had warrants planned for maritime crew traveling through the area. The maritime zone covers 11,000 square kilometers and stretches from Angola to Senegal, but piracy incidents have dwindled since 2021 as national authorities stepped in. The firing incident has killed 4 army personnel at a military station in the Indian border state of Punjab, adding that a search operation was continuing. An unknown number of shooters were still at large at the base in Bathinda city. A defense soldier injuries sustained during the shootings, which took place in the early hours of Wednesday morning, but the statement did not mention the circumstances or other details about who was responsible. Away from that now, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, has spoken with the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in a phone call that mostly discussed the continuing peace talks in Yemen. Progress in Yemen in the last year was made late on Tuesday. He praised Saudi Arabia's extraordinary efforts to pursue a more comprehensive roadmap and offered full U.S. support for those efforts. According to the statement, this could result in a deal within the next 7 to 10 days. In a separate development, the United Nations is being forced to make an appalling choice about whether to continue operations in Afghanistan while the Taliban in 2021, including banning them from higher education and many government jobs. In December, they banned Afghan women from working for domestic and foreign non-governmental organizations, and on April 4, extended that to UN offices across the country. In a statement on Tuesday, the UN mission in Afghanistan said freezing curbs are reminiscent of the Taliban's first takeover of Afghanistan between 1996 and 2001, when the UN said they were responsible. Antonio Guterres has appealed for massive international support for Somalia, which is facing the worst drought in decades. During a joint news briefing with President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed on his visit to the country, Guterres told reporters in the capital Mogadishu on Tuesday that parts of Somalia as well as Kenya and Ethiopia have led to the worst drought in 4 decades, wiping out livestock and crops and forcing at least 1.7 million people from their homes in search of food and water. While famine thresholds have not been reached in Somalia, the UN has said about seasonal rains in March led to flooding that killed 21 people and displaced more than 100,000. According to the UN, which warned that the rains were unlikely to be enough to improve the food security outlook for many. President Mohammed said, away from that, Chilean legislators have overwhelmingly passed a bill reducing the country's work week from 45 to 40 hours in a bid to improving the quality of life and rights of workers, and anonymously approved by the Senate several weeks ago. Chile's left-wing President Gabriel Boric, who is expected to sign the bill into law, hailed it as a pro-family project that aims to improve workers' rights, combat inequality, and promote social justice. However, some of Boric's larger ambitions, such as redo the tax code, have faced setbacks. Now in Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva headed for China as the left-wing leader hopes to bolster economic ties to Brazil's largest trading partner and re-establish the South American nation's role in global diplomacy. Lula posted photos on social media. Pneumonia came about 2 months after he traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with U.S. President, many of which were tested under his far-right predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro. Experts have said Lula also is trying to carve out a distinctive role for Brazil in global geopolitics. A delegation made up of dozens of political representatives, as well as about 240 Brazilian business leaders. He will attend a swearing-in ceremony on Thursday in Shanghai for former Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and Lula will meet his Chinese counterpart Xi in Beijing on Friday. And finally, on Worldview today, Kenya will not default on its debt repayment economic advisor. The debt burden, compounded by a weakening local currency and international market turmoil, precipitated by said Nairobi has no plans to go down that route. He said default was a very bad idea since it would force the government to spend the next 3 to 4 years but he is facing challenges from the high cost of living and growing debt repayments. This has led to protests organized by veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga for 2 occasions by failing to pay its workers. With that, we wrap up our package for you on Worldview today. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, Spectrum TV. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.